Hello FTF group, I am John and I'm here with Glenn today and we are going to talk about relative motion. So relative motion is, let me pause there. Let me have everybody stand up. Take a second, stand with your feet like hips width apart. And now what I want you to do is bring all of your weight to the outsides of your feet and then bring them back center and then bring all of the weight back to the insides of your feet. And then back center again. So right now you're probably asking, why did I just do that? And the answer to that question is you just moved through relative motion. The way you did that was by bringing your ankles all the way in, your knees have to move, your pelvis has to move. Things don't just move in isolation, even though sometimes we target things that way. But really, the whole body is like a symphony or an orchestra, where each little minute piece is intentional and has its job.
So would you say, John, that a compressive force then is more like an isolation movement?
Correct, yeah.
Where you're using mainly one or two muscle groups rather than a whole bunch at one time?
Right, yeah. So like one example, the difference between like a compressive strategy, like Glenn is describing, would be like a bench press, right? You're working chest, you're working triceps to move from point A to point B. And things are moving relatively there as well. But when we're trying to focus on relative motion as a whole, the goal is to move more fluidly. And if you can achieve that over a long period of time, the chance that you develop pain is much less.
And it's much less because you have less compensation, correct?
Yes. So compensation strategy comes into play when you're telling your body what you want to do, and it will do that. It's just that the way it's getting from point A to point B isn't what we want. The most common questions that I've been getting about this new assessment process and new training style is that the end goal is to gain relative motion. So the question I've been getting from that is, what is relative motion? And relative motion is your body, joints, muscles moving in relationship with one another as you're going from point A to point B. So one example of that would be just like a regular walking situation, but it also applies to a lot of exercises. So the difference between the two, so you can move through relative motion, which is everything moving in relationship to one another, or you can orient and move your whole body as one unit to achieve a certain position. One example of that would be like we're going to use a deadlift or a RDL variation. So I'm going to have Glenn place his foot on the side of the box there. So your whole foot will be flat, so you're right on the big toe. And then you're going to get that left foot a little bit forward. Okay, he's going to hold this in his left hand. He is an RDL expert, so he doesn't need these cues, but I'm going to have you go control level. Okay, so because his foot is in contact with the box, and his foot is flat here, we have contacts in both feet, so you have to move through more relative motion. So as he hinges at the waist, this hip is being internally rotated as the left is being externally rotated. So what he's achieving here is the opposite of what's happening on that opposite side. So this would be an example of moving more relatively. Now the difference here, after he comes up from that rep, now we're going to change everything. So you can come up all the way from there. And now I'll have you stay this way. Now we're just going to do a regular RDL. So if he has the weight in his left hand, right leg is planted, he's going to hinge at the waist and bring his whole body over and then all the way back up. So what's happening here is his pelvis as a whole unit is moving all together. Now he's orienting his whole body over and orienting back. Okay. Perfect. All right, so relative motion is the goal because typically if we can move more relatively, there will be a less likely chance that you develop pain. But moving through orientation is not bad. You need it to do certain things, such as playing sports. If you train to get bigger and stronger, most of those motions are compressive by nature and require you to orient, and that's okay. But if you only train that way, you're eventually going to run into a situation in which you can't compress and orient anymore, and you're going to do it in a compensatory type way, and pain is going to be an end result of that. So at some point in time, you are going to have to train to increase relative motion. And with relative motion should come less pain. So with a bench press, since you're creating a lot of compression there, how can that lead to wear and tear over time?
That's a great question, John. So if you have lack of shoulder mobility, but your brain is saying, I just want to push a lot of weight and move this up, you'll find a way to move it, but you're going to get compensation at the shoulder where maybe just the pec is working and not some of these intricate muscles that stabilize the shoulder. That's going to cause excessive wear and tear actually in the joint or on the tendons of the rotator cuff, where you're going to get impingement issues over time. As you do that over time, you get this continual wear and tear. You grind cartilage away, and you'll have shoulder pain eventually. Maybe not right away, but eventually you will. So one of the exercises that John has me do instead of a bench press is a banded single arm press, and I think it would be great if you took me through that and just explain what are some of the things we're looking for with that. And don't get us wrong, this isn't a hypertrophy building. This is just a pure fluid movement and how to teach a pressing movement the correct way and get all of the other muscles that work to stabilize the body active.
Okay, we'll transition over here. All right. So what I'm going to have Glenn do is get in a staggered stance position. So in a perfect world, I get his big toe in line with his right heel. Now that's offset on balance. It's much harder to stay in that position versus both of your feet parallel. So challenging the balance at that point. So his belt line should stay level. He is going to reach his left arm forward without losing any height in the skeleton. If you reach to the point where you're getting smaller, that's too much of a reach and you're recruiting upper tract now. I want you to keep the skeleton as long as you can while you get that reach. And now he's going to do that pressing motion with the right hand. So the nice thing about this is we're still getting chest. He's still getting his tricep at the end of that extension, just like you would a bench press. It's just now we are working on foot contacts. He has his pelvis is offset. He's working his obliques in a different way. There's just a lot more going on. It's a much more complex version. You have to be working everything together as one unit to stay steady. And because we're utilizing a band here, a band functions more like muscle. As that band gets less taut, his muscle actually is relaxing. And as the band gets more taut, he's contracting and making the muscle more compact, which is good for force production.
And I'll say that I've had John take me through a lot of these exercises and the concept of relative movement patterns for the last 6 weeks because of the shoulder issue that I had from repetitive stress. I do something called neuromuscular therapy. I'm treating people all day long, and I'm very right-handed dominant, so I'm using my right hand all the time, and I'm developing a compensation or a bias towards that side. And John is trying to teach my body to move on both sides correctly and to stabilize correctly, and I have to admit my shoulder has felt the best it's felt in 6 months. So
Where were you at even January?
yeah, I mean, from a numbers perspective, internal rotation, I could get like 15 degrees when we started, and I think today when we started, before we even did anything, I was at 75. So I'm very pleased with it. And it's a different way to exercise, a different way to work out, but it makes you feel so much better, almost younger in a way, I want to say, because there's not as many limitations or as many compensation patterns.
If you liked this video, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media. You can also check out our website. All links to our social media and our website are in the description box.